Hey, good evening. This is Devi Ward Erickson, and welcome to another wonderful episode of Sex is Medicine, your number one resource for holistic sex education. And we've been on the air since 2013, continuing to just kick down amazing, awesome, juicy conversations about sexuality, spirituality, healing, and personal growth. And today we're going to cover a very controversial topic. And I wanted to address this head on because of what's happening to reproductive rights in the United States. And because it's a controversial topic having to do with human sexuality, and we should be talking about these kinds of things. So we're going to be talking about today, the title of the show is Shamanistic Abortion Healing Ritual. So abortion, obviously, is the controversial issue. And the concept of having a ritual to heal from the experience of abortion is something that not many people I've ever heard talk about. It's not part of our common dialogue around the topic of abortion. And so is this something that is necessary? Is this something that can help those of us who have gone through the experience of abortion? And is it even required? Because I from what I've observed and the general dialogue around the topic of abortion, it seems to be very much influenced by people's spiritual or religious beliefs, right? So stereotypically, if you have very deeply held Catholic or Christian belief system, you may be very against abortion because your belief system teaches you that life begins at the moment of conception. Conversely, I am a practicing Tibetan Buddhist, and in my spiritual belief system, life does not begin technically until the brain, the heart, and the genitals are all fully formed in the fetus. And this typically is not completely, this process is not completed until after the first trimester. So from my spiritual and religious belief standpoint, that would be for me when life began. And up until that, it's not a life. It's potential for life, but it's not actually life. And then for other people who are atheists or don't have a particular spiritual viewpoint, their approach to abortion may simply be that it's a function of a woman's reproductive health, that there's absolutely no consciousness that inhabits the fetus until it's viable and can viable on its own, until it could live outside the woman's body. So the point is that our views and orientation towards abortion are very personal. They're defined by our own personal belief systems. And that belief system, that right to our own individual belief system, is written into the Constitution of the United States. That's part of the foundation of the United States, that the separation of church and state. And so your religious views should not have an impact on my laws, on the laws, my access to living my life. Your religious beliefs should not influence the actual law, the structure of the law and the code and all that sort of thing. And yet, that's not what's happening. The laws are being changed as a result of other people's religious beliefs, which for me, because I don't share those religious beliefs, I perceive this as an infringement upon my religious freedom. That's what it is for me. It's infringing upon my religious beliefs by creating laws based on your religious beliefs. So that's where we are as far as, the United States. So in this conversation with my beautiful, beautiful guest today, we're also going to talk about not just the laws, because that's one thing, but also our cultural relationship to abortion as a whole, and to, again, a woman or a yoni owner, a womb owner, a uterus owner, and whether or not she has the right to make decisions about what happens to her own body, and then how those choices are influenced by our culture and the result of those choices. So to simplify this, because abortion is such a controversial topic in this culture, many people who have had abortions usually report having lingering feelings of guilt or shame or doubt. And in fact, I myself have had an abortion, and I don't openly convey that information, because I'm not interested in dealing with other people's viewpoints about it. It was my choice. It is my choice, period. And when I interact with many of my female students, and we're collecting, data about our health history or reproductive health history, and some have expressed having an abortion, there's usually one of the other questions I like to ask is, well, how do you feel about it now? And usually when they don't feel shame about it in themselves, but when they tell another person, there's a sense of shame, because as a culture, I believe we're very conditioned and expected to feel some kind of shame and guilt. And yet for some people, they feel nothing. Like, it's not life for them. Again, according to my religious viewpoints, anything up to 12 weeks is not life. So why would I feel guilty about doing something that from my point of view is not a taking of a life in any way? So that's where I stand. So I wanted to bring an expert in to talk about all of this, and then also to give those of us who haven't processed that grief and those residues of shame an understanding of how that can be impacting our health and our life experience now, and how to resolve and free ourselves from that so that we can move on with our lives. So we're not carrying this baggage of other people's crap. Like, that's the thing for me about cultural conditioning. It's other people's stuff. It's other people's belief systems. It's not necessarily yours. And I have enough of my own crap to drag around. I don't really want to be dragging other people's belief systems with me. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our wonderful guest, Elena Salazar. And Elena has been in the healing arts for over 22 years. And for the past 13 years, she has traveled to Peru to apprentice with indigenous shamans and learn the ways of plant medicine. Elena's passion is to heal the wounds that bind us and help her clients know that within us all is pure love and light. So thank you so much for joining us this evening, Elena.
Thank you, Devi. I'm really happy to be here with you and talking about this subject and this ritual. I find it's really important for our healing to continue, for this planet to change, so that we're not carrying shame, not carrying guilt that's not ours. That's something humanity has created, I feel, to keep us out of our power as women in this world. And that's what this ritual is about, in gaining our power back. So I'm so excited to be here.
That is just, I want you to say that again. You believe that the guilt and shame is something that the patriarchy created to keep us out of our power.
Yes.
That is just, I love that. I love that. So nutshell, that's the conversation today. I love that. So one of my certification graduates, Lori, beautiful Lori McCracken, turned me on to you, and she was telling me about an abortion healing ritual. I was like, oh my God, who is this woman? I need to speak with her. And what is this about? Because this is, again, it's something that nobody talks about. So could you tell me about how you got into, or where you learned about a shamanistic abortion healing ritual?
Sure. Well, I've had my own abortion when I was in my 20s, and I'll go back to that story. Just kind of skip that story right now. And I was apprenticing. I've been apprenticing in Peru with some plant medicine. I was with a shaman who offered this ritual for me, and to free not only myself in this grief and energy, to free what might be called the spirit. So on shamanic world, we see energies and spirits and work in the spirit world. And with this ritual, it also frees, say this story where this came from. A father or a parent is saying, you must do this. And maybe this woman wanted to have this child, and chose to have an abortion. There's also that, like you're saying, that family energy or church energy behind it. So in doing this ritual, it also frees ancestrally, it frees the ones living, and it frees ourselves. So this shaman, the story came about this woman who came in from France who had cancer. And her belly was swollen with this cancer, and she wanted to know why she was dying. There was no reversing this at the stage she was at. And she went to Peru. He interviewed her in France. And it was even kind of difficult for her to travel because of the stage she was at. She saw why she had this cancer. And it was left over from this energy, this guilt, this grief of an abortion she had way when she was in her 20s. It freed her. It freed her to die. It freed everyone involved, even the man that was a part of this. And that's how this ritual was created.
Wow. Wow. So what are some of the things that you've personally seen in regards to the impact of confronting that we may have, if you've had an abortion, confronting the fact that, okay, so maybe we aren't completely resolved, and maybe in one way we're completely resolved with it, but in regards to the greater society, like we want to keep it hush hush and not talk about it because there is still like a residue of shame involved. So when people go through this shamanistic ritual, what is the result at the end for them?
I say freedom. There's a potential for freedom. Letting this energy, this story, this experience to go, feeling witnessed, that they no longer have to hide anymore, that it's resolved, that there is coming to a resolution and a freedom, so that their body system can heal from whatever was being held there. And also at times there can be energy attachments. Some people call them entities, another piece, that can be worked on. So this presence of this whole woman is coming back into her power. And I'm sure this goes back, how long have we had Christianity on the planet, where we were condemned for being women? So I see this as a threshold for women and a women's empowerment, self-empowerment.
I agree. And, and I just want to say that it's not just Christianity, like something that as a practicing Tibetan Buddhist, something that I'm really struggling with recently is the misogyny embedded in the Buddhist tradition. Like for most of the time that it was, for the last at least 1,200 years, potentially more, women in Tibet were viewed as second-class citizens, and it's written in some of the scriptures that the female form is inherently inferior, and that women are incapable of realizing enlightenment. So it's not just Christianity. There's like this patriarchal viewpoint to humanity that's all pervasive on this planet. So yes, I say rise to the feminine in all the religious structures.
Yes, I would agree with that. And it is the patriarchy. It came down in knowing there had to be a time where we knew the power of women, and because of the femininity that we carry as creators. We're creators, not to destroy. We can destroy. We have, and I feel that's been the off balance when we become a humanity that's off balance.
Agreed. Well, I mean, in a way, we destroy every month, every time we have our menstrual cycle.
Yes,
right? So
exactly.
It's like the process of creation and destruction. Like we live that every month. We go through that cycle every month.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And there is a potency and a power to that yes is lost when our society tries to prohibit yoni owners and womb owners from exercising their reproductive rights. So you were talking about Peru, mm-hmm. and learning this practice from a shaman in Peru. Could you tell us a little bit more about that? That's fascinating.
Sure. Well, so where do I start?
Go into your whole story. Just tell us your whole story, because we've got plenty of time.
Okay, I'll go into my whole story. I had started out doing massage 23 years ago, and I had always been curious into what was coming through my hands. I heard stories. I come also from a family that believed in spirits and ghosts, and because of her belief system as a Catholic, it stopped her. And I knew coming in that there was something between us feelings, what we think, what we create, and all of this pretty young. So which leads me into my personal abortion story. After my abortion, I was using drugs and alcohol, and I started numbing myself. And I have other stories in my background that kind of maybe led up to that. But the abortion story is what led me to start my healing. I knew I needed something more. I knew there was something more than destroying myself. So I started seeking out therapists, and I started working that way. And there's some other actual abortion support with other shamans in Thailand that I had apprenticed with. And they gave a different ritual for the baby spirit. And but this one, for some reason, felt a little bit more compelling for me, and felt that there was a visceral change in my body. So going back to my story, in 2006, I initiated with plant medicine, going through a divorce. And a friend of mine had said, "Are you ready for your next teacher?" So this kind of led me into, I had a healing studio. I had a lucrative business. I sold everything to move to Peru. And I sat in a hotel in a beach town for weeks before I knew where to go. I was told how to search this teacher, and waited until I got the message. And when I got that message, I ended up in the northern part of Chiclayo, which there's a lot of a mixture there of dark and light, and met my first teachers. So that's where all that started. And then fast forward in this ritual, it was some ayahuasca that I experienced, and this ritual was offered. And we weren't under the medicine. It was all women that we sat in a circle in their chapel. They had a chapel, and the ritual started. And then we ended at a river with what we were given to create, and also then letting go. So the shaman asked me if I would translate this ritual into English many months later. So I found someone, a gentleman that I found on Craigslist, and he was even like, "Oh my God, I need this ritual. When I was 17, I impregnated someone, and I see how important this is." So then at that time, I was granted to do this here in North America, and actually have held it for some years. Waiting for this time, I would check in, I would talk to other clients, "Would you like this ritual?" And they were all yes, but it wasn't time, and now is the time.
Yeah. What was coming up for me as you were talking, and particularly when you were talking about the gentleman, is that, another piece of this, whether or not our beliefs are that, the form is inhabited when it's in the womb or whatever, is there's no denying that it's potential for life.
Yes.
It may or may not be life according to our belief systems, but it is the potential of life. And that was created by two people, hopefully in a consensual situation, though obviously that's many times that doesn't occur. But Let's just, for the sake of this conversation, let's talk about a consensual situation where it's two people who make love and then produce this spark of something that has the potential to change their lives, and to be birthed into this realm, into this world. So if nothing else, it seems like a useful, profound tool to mourn the loss of that possibility, or at least acknowledge and recognize, that was a potential life path that was, could have opened had we chosen to go that way. And it isn't, and it hasn't, because we made another choice, but it seems like an honoring of that possibility, and an acknowledging that had arisen.
Oh, definitely. I can say through the time, even before the the ritual, but through the time going through therapy, there were years there I would like going, now what year, how old would this, I felt it was a masculine, how old would this baby have been? How tall would it be? I like had all these like visions of what this energy would have become. And exactly what you're saying is it's an honoring of, even if I was holding some kind of energy here, freeing that to be freed, which also sparks into a part of the abortion story of this woman. After she did this ritual, she went into another ceremony, and what she saw were all these hearts being released. And it was, and in that is in not only her release, but for all women. So as we do this for all women, the women who cannot come forward, who are in places or countries that are unable to hear this, so that we do this for all women. So that just came through.
Oh, what an incredible intention. That is, and so true, because we're all intertwined.
Mm-hmm.
We're all collective. We're all made out of the same stardust. And so what affects one affects all. So I love that intention, that as we heal ourselves, we also intend that we heal others, or heal all.
Yes.
All can need it. There's a Buddhist practice called Tonglen, which has that same intention.
Exactly.
So we've discussed a little bit about the health impact of unreleased guilt. So I know that another student of mine was mentioning that again, cancer seems to arise a lot when it comes to emotional burdens, and she was talking about how she had a cancer patient who had breast cancer, and like a month before she died, she confessed to her doctor that she'd had an abortion, and it was that guilt that was eating at her, that gave rise to her cancer, believe not believe. But what are some other health issues that you've seen that may manifest for people who haven't come to resolution with their choice to have an abortion?
Well, from what I've seen and what I feel is it diminishes that part of us. So if we're carrying shame and guilt, grief, it's like I see us collapsing. So there's like this versus this in all heart and yoni, right? Heart and womb and creation. So that in health, it would create depression. It can create doubting self. In anything, am I making the right decision? Is this job right? Is this partner right? And not being concise in what is in our true nature of knowing. So because there can be doubt in that choice of should I do this, shouldn't I do this, but in knowing, even though knowing, I know I need to do this. So then we can go all the way to cancer, can create cysts, can create overbleeding, fibroids, like looking at the list, emotional distress, anxiety, and then energy blocks.
Yeah. So what you're describing sounds like textbook definition of trauma, results of trauma, like symptoms of PTSD or symptoms of post-traumatic stress, if not disorder, but post-traumatic stress, like textbook, like for sexual abuse, sexual assault, like all of cysts, fibroids, all of that stuff. So it sounds as though the impact of abortion in this culture can be similar to, it can be a traumatic experience. And so my question is, do you believe, based on your expertise, do you believe that the trauma is more in the procedure itself, or the trauma is in our emotional relationship to the procedure based upon our cultural and religious conditioning?
Well, as a shamanic practitioner, I probably would say both. And that is because I have had a procedure where I had told the doctor, some doctors are not sensitive. They're not aware. They're just going into a procedure. We're an energy body. And if they've had a real, excuse the word, shitty day, and they're going in your vagina, what's an energy that is not of our innate, right? So we're talking of energy in a room. I'm sure they don't do clearings. I work at a hospice house, and we do clearings in there for when people die. So so I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah,
I'm thinking it's both.
Yeah, and you know what, I absolutely agree, and I love that you keep. I'm going to circle back to that, but I just want to mention I love that you keep weaving in the awareness of energy, because that is such a huge part in a holistic viewpoint, which is what shamanism is. It's a holistic viewpoint. We aren't just these meat bodies walking around, we're energy bodies too, and we're influenced by the energy in our environment. Just like we're influenced by bacteria in our environment, we're influenced by energy in the environment. And
exactly.
And yeah, and I agree, because of, you know, the way, and I think it depends, like the type of abortion. If it's a surgical abortion, right? I know back way back 20 years ago, those were the only kind available. I mean, you know, and then there's a pill now, or there's things just orally that will catalyze. I can't remember what that's called, but they're abortifactants.
Right.
That catalyze the body's natural release. And I would imagine that's going to be it's not a non-invasive procedure, right? So that's a different impact. But absolutely, when I first started, just to validate and add to what you were sharing about the importance of the procedure and how we can carry that in our bodies without even realizing it. When I first started training in Tantra and was having yoni healing and yoni massage, one of the areas that was so deeply traumatized, it took months and months and months to heal, was actually the cervix.
The cervix.
And what I got was it was trauma from abortion.
Exactly. And I'm going to say that the cervix. Thanks for reminding me that. Exactly. We become hardened. Yes. It's similar to, you know, we have surgery, we get scar tissue. Our cervix gets like a scar tissue that's built up. So then I'm sure, you know, as a tantric guru you are, that it can be painful, sexually painful, and then create other things. So, but the wonderful thing is, as you're sharing, is you can break it down, and we can go back to our true, I say on the energetic, on the inside and outside.
Yep. Yes, we can revert to where we were before being true. We can heal and resolve the trauma, and yet still retain the wisdom of having gone through that experience. I think that's the benefit of, you know, having gone through trauma and then resolved it. I mean, it breeds compassion. That healing process breeds compassion and also wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
definitely.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how would if we have many listeners of all different sexual anatomies going on here. So if a yoni or womb owner, you know, had an abortion experience and they don't know if they need some kind of ritual healing, what are some kind of things that they can examine within themselves or look for to help them understand or recognize, yeah, I actually might need something like this?
I think just by them looking in and asking, am I still carrying this? Am I still thinking about this abortion? Are there thoughts of, like I was saying, how old would this child be? Have they totally left it? And even maybe hearing us or seeing us, you know, does this spark something in them that they had thought they were finished and resolved with? So the body doesn't lie. Our body knows and remembers. So, and what I mean by that is when you ask that question and you feel a collapse or a wonder, that to me, maybes tend to be a no. Or, I mean, tend to be a yes. A yes is a yes. I guess I'll say it that way. And when we go into that doubt, that's similar to my body saying, wow, there's truth in here.
Yeah. Beautiful. And how does that feel inside for someone who hasn't felt that before? What could you describe that feeling of that secure inner knowing?
The secure inner knowing of a yes. Oh, it's a light up. It's when we acknowledge it. And even when we acknowledge, gosh, this relationship I'm in, there's been doubt. Use that as an example. And then we've been kind of in this maybe denial or doubt, and we feel into it and we really acknowledge it. Our heart lights up and going, yeah, this is right. I am carrying this guilt or this shame, saying, going back to the abortion, right? That I didn't realize I was carrying. And if there's not, there is no resonance. There is nothing there. That you're still in your light, and you're like, yeah, just like you've experienced. Yeah, I know I'm clear with this.
Yeah, beautiful. When we spoke on the phone, another thing that I loved is that we touched upon entities, and you had mentioned that earlier, and that you grew up in a household with a parent who believed in spirits and non-humans, and in my training in Tantric Buddhism, that's very much a part of the tradition. Is, they're like, spirits are around us just like bacteria. They live in and around the body. We coexist with them, right? And
exactly,
it's part of the culture. So what is the danger of having an entity attached to you, quote unquote attached? What is the danger of that in your view?
Well, I'll start this way, if I can. Yeah. That I feel that entities vibrate on low vibrations. So we have like the love light, our love light, that would be, we would call angelic or spirit guides, light beings. That's that light we carry, right? And when we're low vibrating, using alcohol, destroying ourselves, drugs, or even in that guilt or shame, if you're really feeling that contraction and that going inward, that brings us into a low vibration, which then these guys are like little hitchhikers, and it's like going, whoa, come over here. And and I understand it's not anything to fear. It's just a part of, like you're saying, bacteria out here on our skin. But what it can do is, as they attach, they can start bringing a little more negativity, suicidal thoughts. I don't know who I am anymore. Those kinds of words are usually said. Wow, I never say that. Who's saying that? And they're of the darker side. Not that you are love and light. It would be on the dark side. So that's how how they work.
Yeah, so that's so interesting, because reading a book on tantric medicine in the Tibetan tradition, and they talk about the view on mental illness is spirit possession.
Yes, yeah. I believe that.
Yeah, so I love that you talked about the influence of the thoughts, and how our emotions change and our thoughts change and kind of become unrecognizable. And yes, and again, they talk in the healing tradition. They talk about how trauma weakens our natural immunity.
Yes.
And leaves us susceptible to lower vibrational entities. And in the tradition, there's positive entities that travel with you and through you, that are part of what are called your retinue, and they support life, right? There's like something called law that inhabits your whole body, and they're like little, I imagine them like little fairy spirits, right? And they actually support life, and they're necessary. They're kind of like your bacterial, your gut bacteria, right? Your flora. That's what they're like, but all through the body, right? And then, but when we experience a trauma or a traumatic experience, that it damages the law and weakens the life force and leaves us susceptible and open to attack.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And could lead to disease and other things. Could and prolong. It could be wondering why did I get this? My family doesn't have that in our history, and those kinds of things. So there's all these possibilities. Absolutely.
Yep. Spirits and non-humans, one of the 8 primary causes of illness in the Tibetan healing tradition. I'm well trained in those. I love talking with someone else about that. So would you be willing to give us an overview? I know you're not going to give us like the nitty gritty details, but if I were a woman listening to this, or a yoni owner or womb owner listening to this, And I felt like I resonated that this was something that I would like to undergo. Could you give us an idea of what it would look like to undergo a shamanistic abortion healing ritual?
Sure. So it would either be in one-on-one session or group sessions, and I'm actually just got downloaded how I could do it remotely. So yay.
Yay for yoni owners around the world.
Exactly. So well, if we'll say on a one-on-one or online, we would meet together, and I would ask your story. If if there's anything that you want to talk about in a group, and then in setting attention, are you ready to let this go? Are you ready to let this story go? Are you ready to let this energy go? And are you ready to forgive yourself? And if there's other to forgive, can you forgive them? And then I would do a meditation and kind of going inward a bit. And then we work with clay and a name. And then we would go somewhere in releasing this energy and talk there. I do some ritual around that and some invocations around that, as well as prior. And then coming back and then integrating, sharing or journaling what the experience was, and if needed, a cleanse, a clearing, and kind of that's in a nutshell.
Yeah. And what is the importance of the ritual process? Like why is it important to go through all these steps as opposed to just like write it on a piece of paper and throw it in the fire? In your opinion?
In my opinion, I feel that in the things that they will be doing, it's allowing the grief to be felt and released. Because grief can, we can hold it here, we can hold it in the womb, we can hold it. I've seen grief in someone's knee before. Our body holds grief. We can hold lifetimes of grief. So in that tapping in, and that's a part of tapping in, is allowing that grief to be felt and released and let go of.
Yeah, beautiful.
And witnessed.
And yes, exactly. And witnessed and allowed, it validated, accepted, seen,
not judged.
Exactly. Yeah. That's so huge to the healing process. The
yes.
Non-judgmental release.
Non-judgmental. I've had many clients that said, well, I've had 5 abortions. Is that okay? Yeah. Sure. Let's do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. It's the non-judgment.
Yes.
That's huge. And I think that part of it is again, in a culture that condemns vaginas. I mean, just like straight up condemns vaginas. They're, you learn they're stinky, they're hard to take care of, they're, you're not allowed to use them, they're only for somebody else's pleasure.
They bleed.
Pop out babies and you don't have a choice about when that happens. Basically you're an incubator. So the lack of the freedom from judgment to just be where we are in relationship to our sexual organs is phenomenal.
Yes. And in the ritual, it is in creation, as women, we're creators. So a part of this ritual allows them to be the creator they are.
And I think also what's coming to me is also the movement of the body, like the doing the things with the body. It tends to be, as I learn more about the feminine principle in shamanistic teachings, it's all about embodiment. It isn't sitting on a mountaintop floating off into space. It's about being in the physical form and moving and dancing and and being part of this earthly sensual realm and integrating the spirit into that is part, particularly for womb owners, that is a potentially a very important part of this process of releasing is the movement of the ritual.
Yes, and I would agree with that. I know for myself that's been like to gain back the freedom in this body because of the feminine that there is in us flowing. We flow, like you said. If we're menstruating, there's flow, or for the ones that don't menstruate, we're flow.
Yes, exactly. The way as you're moving your body, the movements attributed to feminine are that fluid. Right? They're the sensual movements. They're not these blocky, square.
Exactly.
They tend to have rounder edges.
Exactly.
Yay. Awesome. So how can people get a hold of you if they're resonating with this information and they want to move forward with this type of experience? How do people get a hold of you?
They can get a hold of me through my website to ElenaPSalazar.com. I have all this information on my website, and I'm also offering an introductory, special price of $125. And for being with you and mentioning your name. And
tell her that on the intake form that you heard it here.
Yes, you heard it here. And so on my website, I have a contact sheet, and they're welcome to do that and contact me through my website.
And then you declare yourself as a shamanistic healer. So what other type of work do you do aside from these rituals to support women and having resolution with life choices?
I do a various amount of clients that we do journey work, non-medicine journey work. I might rattle, kind of do smoke clearing energy that they're releasing that either have had some abuse, different traumas, maybe even an automobile accident and a part of their soul fragment or soul loss, and going back in regression and retrieving them and bringing them back home. Both male, female, or
all genders.
I'm going to say all genders. And so I was like thinking of a client. There's also now a lot more people drinking medicine that have not had integration. So
you mean ayahuasca, just to be clear, because not everyone's familiar with that terminology. So when you say medicine, you mean the plant spirit medicine of ayahuasca.
Correct, the plant spirit medicine of ayahuasca, and they have not had any integration whatsoever, not knowing what the heck has happened to them. A lot of places are administering medicine, plant medicines that kind of shock me. And they're leaving the jungle or a city and being right back in energies and maybe not closed up properly. So we talk about those energy things, right? So working with integration and how they can integrate their experience. Yes.
I was just going to say that's I just pardon to interrupt you. I just want to say that's huge. So just again because there's again ayahuasca is like a trendy new age thing now, and it's dangerous. These shamanistic medicines are powerful, and it's dangerous, it sounds like, to do it without the proper guidance and support. So for people who have maybe gone on journeys and haven't had the correct guidance or haven't, are still feeling lost, you can support those people in reintegrating and coming back home to themselves.
Yes. And I've had also some clients that have, like I said, aches and pains. We tend to, as energy bodies, we store our stories, and they come through different ways. So similar to what we're talking about with with abortions and different things. That okay, what's the story here, and can we have it speak and clear it? And that's, if they're ready to clear it, ready to go there and dive in, because I see it as multi-dimensional. And in my practice and in my history, it was myself, it was my mother, it was my father, it was my grandparents, it was my grandparents, it was past lives, if you believe in past lives. So I'm constantly seeing the layers, that this depth that we are. And it always boggles me of, wow, that piece is there that's tied to that, and we don't realize it.
And is it your experience, having studied with a shaman in Peru, do shamans typically have that viewpoint that you're coming from, which is multifaceted and multi-layered, in that, we're healing not just from this life, but from ancestors and other lifetimes, and we're healing not just in this life, but for prospective future lives. Is that a pretty commonly held belief in that tradition?
With the teachers I've worked with, yes. And actually, my first teacher, we used to talk about aliens. And I know that's a whole nother subject, but yes. So we live on there's many dimensions in this one. We're not just this 3D part of us. Our soul resides in this body. We feel that this is not our body, even though we have this precious body. But we're precious beings.
Yeah, and what you were saying, it just struck a chord in me that I deeply believe that one of the greatest tragedies of Western civilization has been the way it has divorced humanity from its sensual environment.
Yes.
And put our, like, boxed in and limited our experience. Like you're saying, we're like, indigenous cultures lived in harmony and balance with the earth. They weren't destroying the planet, and there was like honoring and a sacredness for, and an understanding of the necessity of life and the humanity and connection and all of that stuff. And in Western civilization, it's, if you can't see it, taste it, touch it, smell it, it doesn't exist. And we're culturally conditioned to renounce anything outside of that very limited sensory experience. And yet there's this whole universe of experience, of possibility and potential that we exist within, and yet we squish ourselves into this tiny little box, and we're destroying ourselves as a planet as a result of that.
Yes, and we're seeing that. And that's what's beautiful about this ritual for women or womb holders, is that this gives us a chance so that we can come back to our personal power and creation, so that we can make the changes that are needed before we, do any more damage to ourselves and to the planet. And I would say that's what's important about being in nature. Go out in nature, touch a tree, hug a tree, teach others to touch a tree. Just put your feet on the ground and feel what it's like to be out of your shoes. And it's just so important.
Yeah.
Dance in the woods, dance on the beach.
Be human.
Yeah. Watch children play.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for having this conversation with me today. And I so appreciate and value the work and the service that you offer to all of us to help integrate those fragments back into the whole, and that clear light of truth within each of us.
Thank you, Devi. Thank you for having me this evening.
Awesome. And just so all of you are aware, we will, of course, have links to Elena's website on our page and under this video, so that you can contact her and reach out to her to work with her if what she shared today resonated with you as much as it resonated with me. And I just want to thank you for joining us once again. Again, you can catch us the first Thursday of every month live. And then, of course, you can catch the replay on our website, authentictantra.com, as well as iTunes, TuneIn, Spotify, subscribe on Spotify, all kinds of stuff. And we have, as I was saying when I opened the show, we've got 6 years of episodes. So you have a lot of homework to do. You have a lot of catching up to do if you haven't already dug into the show, if you're new to Sex is Medicine. In between shows, feel free to reach out to us anytime at authentictantra.com. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all the social media stuff. We're kicking down some amazing wisdom, I think, because I'm curating our social media content about the intersection of sexuality and spirituality, and some traditional tantric teachings that very much focus on and celebrate human sexuality and how it is a vehicle for healing and realization in our lifetime. So thank you very much. Much love, many blessings. Have a beautiful, beautiful July.